All right, well, here we are back for part 2 of Language and Its Pitfalls. And we've got up to the point where we get to talk about some of the fallacies associated with language. And these are, again, some of the most fun fallacies that we have. Partially because, unlike so many of the fallacies, they're not always done with the purpose of deceiving you. A lot of times it happens naturally simply through the problems of language. And so the big issue here is that of ambiguity. We think that we're saying something that's easily understood, but it could also very easily be misunderstood. There are two types of fallacies that fall under ambiguity. One is called equivocation. The other is called amphibole. And so we start with the idea of equivocation. Equivocation occurs when the conclusion of an argument depends on a word or a phrase that's used in two different senses in the argument. So we have this word, and within an argument, that word should be used in the same way throughout the argument. But what you've done is to use it in two different ways. Because you know that we have words that have multiple meanings. And, the word poke might be a good example of that, right? Poke could imply a bag. If you're in the South, put my groceries in a poke. Poke could imply, saying hello to somebody if you're on the computer. Poke could mean going up to somebody and physically going, Pillsbury Doughboy on their stomach or something. That's poke. There's all kinds of different ways in which that word could be applied. And so with equivocation, you're using that word in multiple ways, and that leads you to an erroneous conclusion, and that's why it's a fallacy. Let's take a look at the argument that I've got here for you. It says, all Cubans are Marxists. All good cigars are Cubans, therefore all good cigars are Marxists. On the surface, this looks like a good categorical syllogism. It looks like a barbarous syllogism that should be valid. But in actuality, it is not. It commits an equivocation fallacy because the word Cuban is being used in two different ways. When we say in the first sentence, all Cubans are Marxists, that Cuban implies the people of Cuba being Marxists. In the second premise, we say all good cigars are Cubans. Now we're using Cuban in the sense of a type of cigar, right? And so because we've used that word in two different ways, it leads us to this erroneous conclusion that all good cigars somehow are Marxists, right? And that just doesn't really make sense. A few other examples maybe for you to consider. Some triangles are obtuse. Whatever is obtuse is ignorant. Therefore, some triangles are ignorant. Right? Well, in the first premise, we say that some triangles are obtuse. We're using obtuse in the sense of a mathematical concept. In the second premise, whatever is obtuse is ignorant. We're using obtuse in the sense of relating to intelligence. And so because we've used that in two separate ways, it leads us to the conclusion that some triangles are ignorant, which of course is a ridiculous conclusion. We might also have another example here. A mouse is an animal. Therefore, a large mouse is a large animal. Okay. That one's a little bit different, but the idea is still the same. There's an equivocation with regards to this word large. When we talk about a large mouse, we're not talking about a huge animal. We're talking about a being, that's a mouse that's maybe the size of a rat. But if we say a large animal, we could be talking about an elephant or something like that. So there's an equivocation with regards to the word large. So that's the idea behind an equivocation. That word has multiple meanings, and you use it in different ways throughout the argument, leading you to an erroneous conclusion. The next is what we call an amphibole. There we go. An amphibole occurs when the arguer misinterprets an ambiguous word or phrase and then draws a conclusion from that misunderstanding. So in this case, and this is one that's much more likely to be purely an accidental issue, but this word, again, has multiple meanings. There's different ways it could be understood or interpreted. Now, you as the person making the initial statement, you know what you mean. But yet, the other person listening to it, they may misinterpret it because they're thinking in a slightly different way. That's amphibole. We see our example here. John told Henry that he had made a mistake. At least John has the courage to admit when he's wrong. Well, John told Henry that he had made a mistake. Does that mean that John told Henry that John made a mistake? Or does it mean that John told Henry that Henry made a mistake? Right? Who do we mean by he in this case? There's two different ways to interpret it. Again, the person who said it, they know what they meant, but without making it precise, it can be easily misunderstood, as perhaps it was in this case by claiming that John is the one who'd made the mistake. Another example, the tour guide said that standing in Greenwich Village, the Empire State Building could easily be seen. So it follows that the Empire State Building is in Greenwich Village. Well, the tour guide, who has probably made this statement 1,000 times, says standing in Greenwich Village, the Empire State Building can easily be seen. Does that mean that the Empire State Building is in Greenwich Village? Or does that mean that if you're standing in the city and look towards Greenwich Village, you can see, or that if you're standing in Greenwich Village, rather, and look towards the city, you can see the Empire State Building? Again, the tour guide knows what they mean, but you as the tourist, having never been there before, maybe you don't know, and you can get the wrong idea of what's being said in that respect. So that's another example of an amphibole. Actually, let me see if I have another. I don't think I do. No. That's the last one I have on the screen. But I wanted to share with you one of my absolute favorite amphiboles. I saw this in a newspaper advertisement years and years ago, and it said, 100-year-old bed for sale, perfect for antique lover. Think about that for a minute. 100-year-old bed for sale, perfect for antique lover. Now, does that mean antique lover? Does that mean somebody who is enjoying the collecting of antiques? Or does that mean somebody that's, 90 years old and still likes to put on the Barry White records and get to it? Who is it? What do we really mean by that? Obviously they were probably talking about somebody who loves antiques, but you could see how somebody with a particular mindset might think otherwise as well. So, in any event, that's the basic idea of an amphibole. Now, your book is not overly particular here with regards to distinguishing between ambiguity and equivocation. Between equivocation and amphibole. It just talks in terms of ambiguity. So you're not going to be asked specifically here which type of fallacy is being committed, but it's kind of a good idea if you get accustomed to recognizing the difference between them. So let's take a look in your book at page 137, and we'll see exercise 9-2, which gives us a few of these to look at. The first one says, why should anyone believe in the Darwinian account of evolution? After all, the Darwinian theory is just that, a theory, and theories are merely speculation. So, is there an ambiguity problem there? There is. It seems to be on the idea of a theory. Why should anyone believe in the Darwinian account of evolution? After all, the Darwinian theory is just that, a theory, and theories are merely speculation. Well, theory has multiple meanings, right? Theory in a scientific sense implies something that maybe hasn't been proven, but yet has strong evidence to support it. In another, more colloquial sense, theory implies this idea of mere speculation. So we're using, this person is misapplying here, so this would really be sort of an amphibole if you were keeping track of which one you're dealing with. Take a look at number 2. Former President Richard Nixon is not guilty of any of the crimes connected with Watergate: perjury, breaking or entering, burglary, and so on. He certainly was not criminally involved in any of the Watergate activities. President Gerald Ford granted Nixon a complete and unconditional pardon for any crimes related to the Watergate events. And since President Ford clearly had the constitutional authority to grant such a pardon to Nixon, that makes Nixon not guilty. This one is definitely, there's an ambiguity at play here. It's not written in such a way that we can really state whether it would be an equivocation or an amphibole, but there's definitely an ambiguity here, because this person seems to be equating the idea of a pardon with saying that a person is not guilty, and that's not the case. Giving someone a pardon has nothing to do, really, with whether they're guilty or not. It doesn't make a judgment one way or another. It simply excuses their actions, whatever it might have been. And so by making that equation that pardon means not guilty, there is an ambiguity with regards to the way that's being understood. Okay. So anyway, I'm going to let you guys try some more of these. So on 137, you can do 3 through 10. Again, I will have a space on Blackboard where you can put those, upload those, or if you're more comfortable, you can email it to me and I will submit the grade that way for you, or mark it down for you for the homework. All right. Of course, as always, if you have any questions, you can email me. There's also a discussion board. Sometimes the questions you have might be ones that other people have too. So if you post them to the discussion board, I can answer them for everyone's benefit. All right. So again, have a great day, and we'll see you guys next time.